Well, my name is Sheila Murphy. I'm a retired school teacher, primary school teacher, retired now for 10 years, and I live here at the foot of the Cumra Mountains. There was a famous highwayman who's connected with County Waterford, but with the Cumra Mountains in particular, and he was always our favourite. Now, he is a real figure, he was a real figure in history. He was a highwayman, and the court reports are there from 1742, when he was tried in Waterford jail, Waterford court, and he was hanged outside the jail in Waterford, hanged, drawn and quartered to be exact. And children loved to hear all that gory detail. You know, they said that when he was hanged, they took his body down, and the women cleaned off the table where they were gutting the fish, and he was quartered, and his head was put on a spike over the jail in Ballybricken. But he lived very close to another famous man, Lacandara. He lived at Crotty's Lake. There's Counchinone Lake, and there's Crotty's Lake. And Crotty, he was known as Crotty the Robber, Crotty the Highwayman. He was really, well, you know, they had all these stories like he was like a Robin Hood. He robbed the rich to help the poor. He did a bit, but he mostly robbed to help himself and his friends. There would have been a little gang of them, you know. He actually stole a horse in Tramore, a black horse, and rode it all the way back to the Cumra Mountains, and he was hidden there for, he was hidden there for so many years, and eventually he was run to ground in Rathgormack and he was captured. But there are lots of stories, folklore connected with him as well, and the one that fascinates children the most is the hidden gold. All his gold, he was supposed to take his gold and put it in a high boot, a leather boot, and he had the boot filled with gold, and he buried it somewhere in the mountains. And people are still looking for it. And as he was just before he was hanged in Waterford, he called out and said, "Is there anybody here from Kilrossenty or Rathgormack, whichever place you come from?" And he said, "There are 3 bushes. There's one in Cutteen, there's one in we'll say Furrelly, and one in Rathgormack, and somewhere between those 3 bushes I've hidden my boot of gold." And in another one he says, there's a rock which is big enough to turn a coach and 4, and it has the mark of a horseshoe on it, and underneath that rock you'll find the boot of gold. And he was trying to get somebody from the parish to come up and talk to him, but nobody came forward. But he's supposed to have said those things. And of course there were rumours then that certain people who did well afterwards, that they found the gold and that's why they got well off, and but you can still look for the gold if you want. But I don't think metal detectors are allowed. We're not allowed to have metal detectors in Ireland. They did find gold in Carrick-on-Suir, gold coins dating from 17 after Crotty actually, but in the floor of an old pub. I think they're in the museum now, only 2 years ago. So you can still find gold in Cumra.
There's an erratic, what you call an erratic, a big boulder, a massive boulder, the size of the house here, like. Big boulder that came down during the Ice Age, and it is lodged at the banks of the Dehill stream there near the Queen Anne Road. And it's on Speed's map of Ireland. It's one of these very famous erratics, or a speaking stone, and it's known as a speaking stone, or Clough Lowrish, the stone that speaks. And there's a local story about why it's called Clough Lowrish, and it's the origin of the old saying being on fearing a sheriff, which is a very common old Irish saying, being on fearing a sheriff. But here we say being on fearing a sheriff as the Clough Lowrish Prava. So we have an addition on to the being on fearing a sheriff, and that was Clough Lowrish was jumping up and down when it said that. So anyway, the story behind it was that this couple were having a dispute. The man felt that the woman was being unfaithful to him, and he was bringing her to the parish priest, or the priest it was said, but I don't know if there was any priest at the time. But he was bringing her to the priest to make her to confess to the priest, or to say, to admit to the priest whether she was or she wasn't unfaithful. And when they got as far as the erratic, the rock on the side of the Deha stream, he said, "Look, kneel down there," he said, "and confess to the stone," he said. And if you're telling the truth, the stone will agree with you. So she said anyway that she wasn't unfaithful. The next thing was the stone split in halves with a thunderous roar to prove that the woman was lying. And that's why they say they're being unfearing. And the stone is supposed to say being unfearing a sheriff, that the truth is bitter. But the truth was bitter in that she was telling lies, and the truth was bitter, she couldn't tell it. So being unfearing a sheriff, that's the Clocklauristic Prava. And the speaking stones is part of, speaking stones are part of kind of the Celtic folklore. I think there's one or two in Wales as well. But there's a major speaking stone here anyway, Clocklaurish. It's only 2 miles from Navy Bryan on the old Queen Anne Road.
My name is hEireann, and I'm a storyteller, performer and a writer, and I do a lot of improv as well. I've been interested in folklore probably my whole life, ever since I was a kid. The whole notion of tales and fairy tales and making up stories is something I've always done. I think sort of more formally then, after I'd been an actor for a number of years, I became involved with some people who were using storytelling in other ways, maybe to use in corporate events or to make pieces of theatre and art as well. And so 2010 I became much more involved in storytelling in that way.
Well, I've been interested more or less all my life, but more particularly when I was teaching, because when you're teaching in a local school, the school which I went to myself, you know, you pick up a lot of folklore and children love it, so it's one of the favourite things to do in school. Talk about folklore.
Many places. I used to make a lot of them up myself. I would hear stories from my grandparents, of course. My granddad was great for telling me stories. I suppose books as well as a child, and I grew up in Dublin, so a lot of the Dublin stories I would have just heard from other kids, you know, legends and stuff like that. So I suppose a mixture of the oral tradition and also from books.
Well, most of the stories I have, a lot of the stories would be to do with well-known folklore. Say, for instance, the parish that we live in, which is Kilrossenty, is, you know, the patron saint would be St. Bridget, and a lot of the folklore of this parish would be centred around St. Bridget making crosses, and there are all sorts of stories, and a lot of them are to do with kind of a religious background. But then there are a lot more stories to do with fairies and that sort of thing. Ghosts, banshees, you know, holy wells or fairy trees, you know, you name it. We have a little bit of everything.
Like I said, I've been interested in folklore my whole life, and I'm a writer. So in 2010 I became involved with the project with Sandy Dunlop, who works with a lot with folklore and storytelling in Ireland, and Camille Donegan. And we basically used to meet fairly regularly to look at mythology, Irish mythology, with a view to A, sort of learning new lessons from it, and also B, using it to make more art, to make theatre and to make radio drama as well. So I think it became much more diving in a deep way to it. But yeah, it was around 2010, yeah.
My name is Brandan O'Douglas and I'm a computer programmer. Irish folklore. I suppose, I mean, I was born into it. I grew up with a father singing and playing Irish music from the start of the day to the end of the day, I suppose, really. And stuck in the middle of that was, you know, going out working on the farm and helping Dad with that. I didn't really, you know, follow in his footsteps when it comes to the Irish music, but the rest of my family all did. And anytime I'm home, it's like, you know, you walk into the house and there's somebody playing music somewhere in some corner of the house, you know. So I suppose I've constantly been surrounded by it. And although I've kind of built a life for myself above in Dublin, I always look forward to going home and surrounding myself with people I love and I suppose the music and the singing is again.
I mean, some folklore is quite new, some of it is thousands of years old, and we have new folklore. We have new folklore in this parish, which is only 30 years old, 40 years old, and you can see where it came from. For instance, there's a great tree up on the Mahon Falls, and it's called the Fairy Tree, and the Fairy Road, and your car runs up a hill when you turn off the engine. Well, that folklore is really only 40 years old, and we remember it. We remember when it started. The road wasn't even there, and then somebody discovered by accident, and now it's become, and visitors think we've had this, you know, it's been here for thousands of years, but not. What interests me the most about Irish folklore? Well, it's something that everybody likes, and you know, it's something that you can have great conversations about. It's a great interest. You can go around and visit the places and talk to people. Most people have stories to tell you, you know, and it's really by chatting to people and knowing the area that you get the feel for the folklore of a place. And a place is all about its folklore. Our folklore is all about the place, whichever you want it.
Okay, so the term Shanachie is an interesting one. Shanachie, of course, to many people is the bearer of old traditions, but to many people it's also just a storyteller. And I find obviously people like Eddie Linehan very inspiring as storytellers, but I also find storytellers in lots of other media, like a filmmaker taking a story and running with the story and telling a story that way, I think is a very important form of storytelling. It's not everybody's definition of storytelling. I think children are incredible storytellers. So probably the most inspiring stories I've ever heard have been from people under the age of 14.
I suppose in some areas, you know, with the town spreading out now and people are inclined to move out. They're moving out from the town, building in the countryside. But what's happening is people are frightened to leave their children explore. You can't explore the countryside anymore. For instance, when I'm talking about the Holy Wells or talking about Cloughlarish or Lacandara's Rock or anything, children would have been free. We would have gone off and explored all those places on our own. Now you can't go outside the door. For instance, I've asked children, what's in the field beside your house? They don't know. They don't know if there's a stream there, if there's a well there, what sort of trees, anything. Oh, we can't go into that because we're not allowed or because the man doesn't want you to go in. That's not true. It's that people have become very, very protective of the children, and they're just not allowed, so they don't hear. You're not going in and out of people's houses. We were always in and out of older people's houses. You'd go into Johnny or Maggie or whatever, and you'd have a bit of bread and jam, and they'd tell you stories and so on. That doesn't happen anymore. People are scared of unnecessarily. It's not, I think children should be allowed more freedom, and that's how I picked up a lot of my interest in folklore. And children today, I go to talk to children, and then they say, oh, the old woman must come with the stories today.
I don't think so, to be honest. I mean, it's not very prominent when it comes to mainstream media or anything like that, but there's certainly plenty of festivals every year. Now, I wouldn't have gone to many of them, but there's Goody Clancy Week in Clare, and I volunteered myself for the Oireachtas. My housemate is heavily involved in Irish music and plays the flute herself, and she was involved in the organisation behind the Oireachtas and asked me if I'd be interested in volunteering, and it was, I forget when it was, but it was maybe 2 months before Christmas or something like that. I'm not entirely sure of the date, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was great. It was up on City West, the City West Hotel, and I was the bouncer on the door checking people's tickets that one night, and the other night I was the person selling the tickets. And to be at a festival like that where the default is everybody speaking Irish was truly wonderful. And because, you know, I mean, in my daily life, I'm a computer programmer. Like, I mean, we've got a multicultural company, and nobody there would speak Irish. And to be going to a festival like that and to be immersed in it was lovely. And I'll certainly be volunteering next year.
I don't. I think it's actually coming back in a big way, especially in Europe and North America. The sort of global connection of storytelling is starting to come together. I'm a member of the Storytellers of Ireland, which is the Irish Guild, and I myself do a lot of contemporary storytelling and more modern styles of storytelling. But I think even bringing modern storytelling and having it in a night with more traditional folklore storytelling is opening up new audiences to the old stories as well as the new stuff. So I really feel like storytelling is alive. I was lucky enough to be invited to tell at Cape Clear last year, and I can honestly say the houses were packed and audiences were incredibly engaged in the stories. I've never seen such engaged audiences before, so I think it's alive. I think storytelling is about connection with your audience and connection with the universal story. So any technique that you would use to connect with your audience as opposed to alienate them, I think is great. In terms of performance, making eye contact with them, being flexible with your story, incorporating sort of the odd heckle you might get from the audience, also making it relevant to the audience you're telling. If you're choosing stories to tell, maybe open your audience up to new ideas, but also telling them something that might relate to them, I think is a good way to connect with them.
Banshee was always sitting on some fence combing her hair and screaming at people with the name O in their name, you know, before somebody died. But I was saying to my grandchildren lately that we used to have, the barn owl was always in the old mill, you know. And if you didn't know, like children today, they have television pictures, they know what a barn owl looks like. You know, you can see it in books and so on. But back when I was a child, we had no books, no television. You didn't see pictures of things like that. And you didn't see a barn owl very much because it was dark. So I suppose when people saw those things, you know, and the noise of it, it's a ghost. And then you had like a billy goat, you know, a big white billy goat up on the fence and the two big horns on his head and all that. I mean, he could have been a puka or whatever, you know. And we were always talking about the puka and the banshee. And we couldn't pick blackberries after the puka had been because the puka relieved himself on the blackberries and we weren't allowed to eat them. That was around October. That was the puka. And the banshee, then we were always, if you were out at night, you'd hear stories of the banshee. And of course, every noise then, you know, you can just imagine. People really believed in it, but it was probably, well, it was, barn owls and billy goats and things like that.
Madan Kyover Saurig in Akala Lochlane, Vioshin ik Fiekla na Ahar, Fionn McCool, agus in Acharda Snafina. Balaik Morla Ra e Oshin a raibh dúlaige sa tóriacht, ach bilé freisin a raibh gob bínaige. Hiac sé na cnic os Cion Lochlane ag déanamh bringlóda frí créatúr vishtúla agus é canna frí hira again. Lárig parsa ar capal bán ag bun na spéra. Durir mar tháinig sé náracht, thug Oshin frí dara gur ben áling í an marcug. Bhí si gléasta mar van rion agus lunrig a cuid grúige ór sa grian ar nós crónach. Cheap Oshin go raibh a súla ar da be glasha agus bugaine da bhaca sé riamh. Hit sé an rá le lárug. Rinne sí meanga agus dúirt le Oshin. Níomh chin ór is anam dum, agus is banfransa mé ó hEireann an óg. Tháinig mé ó ma bhalla féin ar mo capal tuis gur hit mé an rá leat a Oshin. Tarlón go tír an óg agus beimid ar na lánún is sunna atá beo bag. Cheap Oshin go raibh sé ag déanamh bringlóda, ach hín si amach a lámh chuige. Tar níor de lom ar mo capal agus raimí le chéile go tír an óg. Chuig sé níor ar an gapal bán agus cuinnig sé grain dagan arthaí in a bhacling. Dimig siad ló ar cosa níorda le fionnagus na fianna fáca an níag agus a méil ar lethe cála húntas. Chuinnig ó sin agus níomh groim dagan ar chéile agus an capal dá drórú go tír na nóg. Ar eiglis ar cosa an irda trasan na farga, agus is ar éigen a dimig an cos in acha an isca. Gan bhfuil dimig na glánta glasa dorcha agus sléise na hEireann as ar glastír díomh agus bhí ceover teomh na mara mór himpelartha. Go tobann chris ó sin tíorthúchas níomh. Chur ó sin faoi I dtír na nóg agus é sonna sásta ar feadh tamil. Bhí muintear na háta sonna agus cardú leis a gcónaí. Bhí níomh an chunálta leis comá ach I gcaitheamh ama bhothaigh sé éire uig. Bhualann tuaigneas go donna é agus theasta uig a chlán agus chuirde gáil a rís. Thug níomh é seo faoi deara agus díofraigh si de an fá a bhí lena bhrón. Má híim mo chuirde agus mo chlán in éireann. Céim fá nach dúirmid cuairtartha agus is féidir lem tú a chur naithna de gach aon duine. Ach níor bhéidir le níomh tír na nóg á gáil agus dímpigh si ar ó sin gan dulach ard. Ach ina crí stig bhí isig níomh go raibh agna socartha aige agus dúirt sí leis. Tóg leat mo chapal go hÉireann agus cuimeadigh sé slánthú, ach geall rud bhandam ná chur de cos fút ar halamh na hÉireann. Geall ó sin dig go bhannach sé ar an gapal. Fóg sé níomh agus é ag fágáil slán le gealltas gneach sé sa bhalla le arís go luath. Chuainn si agus ag brathnú ar a capal ag tógáil ó sin leis thar na cnic agus trasan na domta go hÉireann. Idirach níor aithin ó sin an tír ina raibh sé ar chur ar bith. Cá raibh na phléitethe. Céim fá raibh cuma níos lú agus níos lige ar na daoine ná mar bhí cuioine aige ortha. Chuaigh sé go dtíon áit ina méid chala mór a athair. Ach ní raibh ribhe ach maló carga agus í fián le fialaí agus le drisce garbha. Scrad ar bhrean agus ar sceoling, cúna a athair, ach ní raibh siad ann. Chunnig sé roinnt fearr agus sé ar ortha ag iarraidh carraigh mhór a bhoga ó halamh Héireann agus bhog sé an capal ina dro. Ó sin is anam dom, mac ing bhicúil. Cén áit is féidir am tactar agus ar léchra na fianna, a díofraigh sé díomh. Stán na frir ar, ba éisin an fearr ba bhó chunig siad riamh, dreagar an fearr ba hinna díomh ó sin. Chúla mé faoi Ionn McCool agus na fianna, ba léchra allmhór iad a bhíoch na gcónaí sa tír seo 3 bliain óhain. Níor chreid sé an rud a chúla sé, bhí a chairde agus a chlán imethe. Dúir dóibh bunan 3 bliana a dtír na nóg agus 3 bliain in éireann. Lean na frir ortha ag obair agus bhothaigh ó sin trú a dómh. Bhí siad rólag chun carraigh mhór mar sin a bhoga. Chrum sé síos den capal agus bhrúigh sé an carraigh lena neart churp. Go díreach agus an carraigh ag rolla le fána, chúla ó sin snab. Bhris díolat an capal agus hit ó sin go talamh. Lam lárach hit úlach 3 bliain in ús ar thuúlaí. Díreach an sin deithraigh ó sin ó léach foláin go seanar lóchalach. D'fhág an capal ar na cosa deirg agus ri sé leis ar luas na gaotha. Chuoin ó sin mar thuig sé nach bheochaigh sé níomh ó tír na nóg arís. Bhothaigh na fir trúdó agus thóg siad a bhalla é. Cé go raibh sé an-bhrónach, bhain sé tanmh as cóúdar a chairde nua. Chúla for bhór bhhaintear na hÉireann faoi Fionn McCool nó na fianna. Gan bhfuil bhí ó sin ag sin scéalta agus dáanta faoi na léachra a raibh aithne aige ortha agus ag déanamh silt do dhaoine lena gábín.
It's so carry me, it's carry me my store. Me na grama na me she begging let her more. It's so carry me, it's carry me my store. Me na grama na me she begging let her more. It's so carry me, it's carry me my store. Me na grama na me she begging.